And today we're going to talk about some real world applications in AI, how it's being utilized in business today, as well as a historical look at the development of AI over the years and just some separating fact from fiction on things that are going on in AI versus real world use cases that you can use today and how you can actually apply these tools in your business today. We're going to talk about the history of AI, as I mentioned. Ryan's going to take us through a timeline of sort of the philosophical conceptions of AI to where we're at with it today. We're going to look at the hype versus reality, how businesses are using today versus all the content and marketing content being put out there today, and some executive insights on how to get started with AI in business as well.
Once again, my name is Ryan Redmond, CEO of Optrua, and I'm approaching this webinar from the standpoint of a system implementer. I've been in consulting and system implementation my whole career. Optrua is a company focused on delivering solutions built around Dynamics, specifically Dynamics customer engagement. We provide comprehensive services and have a mindset around continuous improvement over time, and very focused on end user and client-centric approach, where we're delivering solutions that help end users be more efficient and productive and help companies engage better with their clients. That's a quick overview of Optrua. I'll pass it over to Jordan for a quick intro on Dynamic Web.
Yes, thank you, Ryan. So hi, I'm Jordan Martinez. I manage partnerships and channel sales for Dynamic Web. And just a little bit about us. So we are a comprehensive e-commerce solution. So we're essentially an all-in-one e-commerce platform. We create portals, content management, product information management capabilities. Our customers are generally in that mid-market to large to enterprise customer, which means that we do take a very customer-centric approach. Most of our customers have very unique, customized needs. They have a complex B2B network. So a lot of their, they have customer-specific pricing. They have large quantities of SKUs, lots of transactions across, multiple, so distribution, manufacturing. So we take a very detailed approach with our customer base to understand what do they need, what will set them apart from their competition, and we build them custom solutions based on it. We really look to create a platform that is user-friendly. We understand that that will keep your customer base coming back. So from our standpoint, we're always looking to innovate, adapt, and create new ways for your customers to utilize our platform and keep them coming back for your for business. And from a standpoint of where we're located, we are a global company. We were started in 1999, so we've been around for 25 years. We were created out of Denmark, so we are now in North America and really across the globe. We have about 4,000 plus customers worldwide, and we really help various industries. So like I mentioned, distribution, manufacturing, really across the board. We can find applications for our platform and in pretty much every segment of business. So I appreciate you having us here. And Ryan, I'm going to give it back to you and kick us off.
There we go. Great. So before I jump into the detail history, I want to just set the expectations a little bit on kind of the tone of this webinar. So both Jordan and I were talking right before we launched the webinar, and we've been in very many different AI presentations over the last number of months. And it's really interesting because when you get the marketing messages and it looks like it's really cool, it's going to be this, thing that blows your mind. You get into the webinar and it's like, okay, what is it? Is it really here? I'm approaching this from the standpoint of an implementer, somebody that actually is delivering services today around AI and around data and customer-centric workloads. So this webinar is going to be more of a thought-provoking exercise where, I'm going to be showing or sharing information that is real, something that maybe will help us think about how to engage with AI and how to think about it today, and then where that might be going into the future. So not really focused on, you're not going to know how to build AI at the end of this seminar. It's not going to be very product specific, but more high level. And with that said, let me jump into this timeline. So one of the interesting things that when I talk to people about AI is if you think of just all the marketing stuff and all the what you hear on the news and on the media, you might think that, hey, it just happened. But really, if you go back and you look at the history of AI, it started way back in Greek myth and legend. The Greeks talked about the god of metallurgy that would make automatons and stuff for the gods to do their bidding. These artificial beings could do that. You look through up to the 21st century where you had mathematicians and philosophers that built the underpinnings of logic that finally got to the point where in 1956, computers, the term artificial intelligence was actually coined at a workshop at Dartmouth College. And from 1957 to 74, we had early advances in neural networks, natural language, search, kind of the underpinnings of AI. And you think, wow, 1974, you start counting, how many years ago was that? That's like 50 years ago. And it kind of blew my mind when I first thought about that. Then you get into, and this was something also interesting, AI's gone through a cycle of what they call AI winters, where during the birth of AI, they had all these high expectations of what AI, hey, we're going to have robots that, replace us all back in the 50s and 60s. Well, obviously that didn't come to pass. And when it didn't, people stopped investing in AI and that technology. That was that first AI winter in 74 to 80. Then, computing kind of got some traction. People once again said, oh, hey, AI is this really cool thing. It's going to take off and replace everybody and do all these wonderful things. In the 80s to 87, they kind of had an AI boom, lots of investment. Governments were getting involved in putting money on the table. And they built, kind of the underpinnings of beginning expert systems. Then same thing happened again. Expectations were really high. The development of systems kind of fell short, and we ended up in another AI bust or a second AI winter. During this time, 87 to 93, the stats were over 300 AI companies basically went out of business, were either acquired, went bankrupt. It just, another bust, basically. Finally, in the mid 90s to early 2010-11, just through advanced computational power, storage, all the advancements that were happening in computing, we actually saw a resurgence in AI, where getting us to 2011 to 2022, we got into kind of the era of big data, transformer architecture, large language models, and so forth. And then finally, the big tipping point happened November 2022, where OpenAI released ChatGPT, and that's where kind of the media frenzy, kind of this shockwave across all popular culture was happening. People started really getting excited. And so that leads us to today and beyond. Where are we? What's going to happen tomorrow? Things are changing fast. People are both excited and nervous. And which leads me to the next slide, which is just kind of a thought-provoking piece where I kind of think back to, if I was to put myself back in the Industrial Revolution, the late 1700s to 1800s, what was happening, what was changing, the development of steam engines, factories, all of that was happening very rapidly over the course of about 100 years, and the world changed literally kind of overnight, if you will. And if you were in that era, you were a craftsman, say, and you were making widgets, you might have thought like, hey, I'm not going to participate in this industrial revolution. I'm just going to make my widgets. I'm really good at it. And then all of a sudden a factory comes in and kicks you to the dirt. I'm thinking that we're kind of in that same period, but it's with the technological revolution, right? Where is it going to be in the next 10 to 20 years, 50 years? Is it going to be something that we can ignore? I think not, and I think that's part of where I want to take you next is kind of the thinking of, okay, great. If we don't want, if we want to really understand what reality is, then I kind of need to understand, I have all this hype. Why do we have all the hype? And what's the reality of the hype?
I sort
Go
of
ahead,
look at
Jordan.
it, Ryan, and I just think like I was looking through the timeline and just thinking to myself, it kind of reminds me, I'm an 80s and 90s child, right? And it kind of reminds me of like the movies and how you saw a lot of just like war games and then Back to the Future and certain like movies that try to, Terminator, try to tell the future and utilize some of this technology that was really sort of mythological, right? And then you have some movies that would talk through, past lives and how technology wasn't there for people to bring their visions to life. And I just kind of look at this and I'm like, yeah, you know what? I kind of remember all of this growing up. And I remember having all of these kind of weird expectations. I think Back to the Future is a great movie because we just experienced the year that the second movie took place when they went to the future. And you get to kind of see like, in the 80s and 90s, what they thought 40 years would look like.
Yeah,
And it was not exactly there. There were some things that were kind of there, but some things and a lot of things weren't, right? And so I think setting expectations is really just a great way to approach what we're talking about today. And so I just when you were talking about hype versus reality, that was kind of the message going through my mind is what is reality and what expectations can be set so there might not be a winter. There'll be more investment to try to refine it versus people pulling away from it.
yep. I mean, the classic thing that comes to my mind is I remember, and man, this goes back to the late 80s, maybe early 90s, where, oh yeah, we're not going to have to type on the keyboard. We're just going to use voice dictation.
Yeah.
And that's barely just today starting to become a reality. And
Yeah.
that was what, 30 years ago.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of hype about it. And the reality was like, oh, okay, yeah, finally 30 years later, we're at a point where AI is able to recognize voice and actually do something with it. But it's at the very beginning of that pattern.
It's a good point.
Okay, so it feels like I'm kind of going fast, but there's a ton of stuff, and I think I'll try to slow down a little bit. So the next thing is understanding the hype versus reality. I think there's 2 points to first talk about. One is AI in general. And there's there's lots of subcategories, but really, if you boil it all up, there's 2 big subcategories. There's what I'd call traditional AI, and there's the newer generative AI. So traditional AI has been around since, like I had mentioned, 56, 60s, 70s, 80s. In traditional AI, think of that as expert systems. We as humans already know a set of rules, and we need the computer to go through a decision process, a logic process to produce a result. Think of like those chess playing computers, or think of potentially Google. If you've ever Googled before, I think everybody has. Google uses AI to give you results back. Your Netflix, if you use Netflix, the recommendation engine for the videos that pop up at the top, that's AI that's giving that to you. And that collection of AI is so different than generative AI. Generative AI is the newer breed of large language models. It's the newer BARD and ChatGPT and kind of the image generation things that we're doing. It's a bit more creative, and it doesn't follow rules. Kind of think of the difference between the two as traditional AI is like a worker that is really good at following a pre-decided set of rules, and they don't deviate from those rules. Where generative AI is like an artist that doesn't really follow the rules, but they just kind of go and build something. And why did they build it? Because it was cool or because it was interesting and they just made something. So those 2 concepts I think are important to get through the hype, is to understand Yeah, we've had traditional AI in software that we're using for years, and it's the generative AI that's the new kid on the block. Then you take that and you combine that with a big word, democratization, which I hate to even put it on a slide, but I think it's interesting because it is thrown around a lot. But that just means that today, AI is at everybody's fingertips, right? You can immediately go to the web, you can create a chat GPT account from OpenAI in 5 or 10 minutes, and you can type something into the interface and you can start interacting with AI. So the democratization of AI just is a fancy way of saying everybody now can touch it. And it's important to understand that difference, the hype versus reality. The hype today is all around the fact that everybody can touch something related to AI and interact with it, but it's like you have to ask it a question and it'll give you some result. You just don't really know what's the decision-making process that happens underneath. That's traditional AI, and everybody's excited about the possibilities. However, the actual, what you actually get is way different than what's being hyped. I think, Jordan, right before this, we were talking about the several seminars that we've been on. And if you're
Yes.
following AI, you'll see these really cool looking emails from Microsoft or others that wow, this is really cool. And you go to the webinar and then you're like, oh, that's all they're talking about? They're not, I thought it was going to be this mind-blowing, thing. And the reality is, yeah, we're at the tipping point, or we're just starting to see what can be done with generative AI. But the reality is we're probably, some years away from it being like pervasive and across the board. I don't
Yeah.
know, Jordan, do you have other thoughts?
Yeah. So, one the big aha moment for me, because I'm like you, like it always felt like it was a big pot of nothing. Like every time that I would either attend or listen to a seminar or be there in person, I always felt like I was excited to hear about this like new revolutionary thing, but then it never really had like like an end. Like this is the finite product that we're here to show you. And I think the aha moment for me was we had an engineer from Microsoft who works on their AI and Copilot, and he said, and this really set the, like we talk about how we had these winners and expectations probably weren't properly set and they just fizzled out, and it changed the whole discussion. He essentially said, what I know today about what I'm working on from an AI standpoint will change tomorrow, and then from that day it'll change the next day. And his point was that it's evolving. Every day it changes. It is a growing, evolving product. And when he said that, it really kind of set everyone into, okay, well, that makes a lot of sense then. Now we can set our expectations properly so we know, like, hey, in 3 months, we're going to have this awesome product that we can roll out. And that's not really what they're doing. They're trying to get it out there now so it can grow and be developed as it's out there. And that's a totally different mindset from, when's the next version of Microsoft Office coming out or something like that. It's
Yeah.
it's a completely different viewpoint. And when you start to look at it like that, like I said, for me, it was an aha moment. I just started thinking of it, okay, what are the things I can start to integrate and use in my day-to-day life where it can serve a purpose and help me get a better understanding of what it's good for and what it's not.
Yep. Yep. And by no means am I trying to kind of dampen. I'm personally extremely excited about AI. And you can actually see examples of it in this presentation. And I'm not sure if the next slide, let's go to the next slide. And I'll talk about some additional things and then come back to that point I was going to make about being excited about where we are. So this is a really interesting slide, and it takes a second to kind of wrap your head around what it's showing us. But the 0 mark at the top that's the human performance level. So if we're looking at handwriting or listening to speech, the 0 level is where we are. And this graph, for the sake of analysis, set the baseline for AI as at -100. So you can see over time, and I had mentioned earlier speech recognition taking forever to get here. And, in the 1990s-ish, it looks like, it started, and then it was promised, it was promised, it was promised. This is the green line that I'm following. And then finally now in today's realm, it's just at the same level of human performance finally. And you're seeing all of these things trending up to human performance level, and you might think, oh wow, it's here, it's going to take care of everything. But remember, this is just 5 very discrete pieces related to us humans: handwriting, speech, image, reading, and language. And we as humans are much more sophisticated than just these 5 slices. Let's go to the next one. Unless, Jordan, did you have any other comments? I know you thought this was an interesting slide.
I love this slide. This is another aha moment for me when I first saw this slide, because it really helped put a lot of things in perspective. Just like for instance, you talked about the speech recognition. This slide does a lot for me to explain why my Siri could never understand me 5 to 6 years ago with my New Orleans accent whenever I would request things. So it makes a ton of sense on where it's come. Because I mean, if you look at it just from 2010 to 2015, that is a huge, huge leap from where it was in 5 years earlier, right? And it's made another huge leap, even when you get from below to above that line. So for me, I love this slide. Like, this slide to me helps me get a much better understanding of how long it's taken. I mean, this is a 25-year gap, right? How long it's taken for it to go from where it was just starting to where it's at now, which is, to me, it's exciting. I agree with you. It's a great.
And there's one other thing that I just remembered is, if you look at the slope, handwriting recognition, speech recognition, image, they're all kind of like, they're getting steeper and steeper as we get closer to today. Where you get language understanding, it's like it's almost straight up.
Yeah.
And so we are going to be in this period where these advances are going to happen very quickly. I don't know what quickly means, if that's over the space of 3 years or 5 years or 10 or more, but things are happening faster, and this graph also proves that out.
It's a great graph.
Yeah, let's go to the next one too, and there's some interesting bits here as well. So the piece that's interesting, let's look at the images for a second. So if you go back to 2014, these are all computer generated images, and you can see 2014 very pixelated. Finally, 2018, 2019, they become clear, but they're very, focused on the face. Finally, in like 21, we're starting to get bodies in, and then up to like 2022, where you have a Pomeranian and some tigers. Somebody just presented a prompt into an image generation tool, and it generated something. So all of that stuff up to here sounds like, wow, that's amazing. And it is. And it might make you think that, like, wow, okay, we're going to all be replaced by, AI in tomorrow, which is so far from the truth. So many things are still, so many really hard things are still ahead of us. The big thing is AGI, or general artificial intelligence. That's that HAL from 2001 Space Odyssey. That's that idea of a robot that can actually think and feel and all of that stuff so far down the road. The other interesting thing with AI is that the smarter the AI gets, and this is scientifically what they're challenged right now, it's harder and harder to explain why the AI came up with whatever it came up with. And so mathematically, the way they program AI is like a black box. They have all these algorithms, very complex algorithms, but they just put an input in and they get an output out, and nobody knows what happened in between. What was the thinking that the AI did? And it's really important to be able to explain what the thinking was to know whether it's rational or irrational thought. Then you have stuff like ethics and governance. Another thing that kind of twisted my mind is AI and cybersecurity. So if we have AI that's protecting our assets and our digital stuff, but then you have hackers using AI to, try to penetrate that, you have to have one AI smarter than the other and how do you, and that's kind of scary.
That's tough. That's a tough one. I think that's, I mean, look, I'm not a huge conspiracy theorist, but I am those are the things that personally, like I think of that make me nervous, right? It's always it's the ethical side because every great invention, no matter what its intention was, has also been used for bad in some way, shape, or form. And this is one that could have so many crazy implications on where it can go. And that ethical one, and how do you keep things secure? How do like you said, you put something in and it gives you an output, but you don't know where or how it came up with that output. To me, that's always the one where I'm questioning. I'm like, that's the one where I'm like, a little nervous about that, right? So sorry to cut you off, but I'm always that's kind of always my
Great
Hey, and
comments.
if I could chime in too with a question from Kelly, she's asking an interesting question on this slide here. But like, for example, these images we're looking at, what are the fingerprints that identify a real image versus an AI image? And one thing I don't know if you guys have messed around on like ChatGPT or I guess really more like Midjourney or the image generators, but there are still some funny things that AI has trouble with, like hands. A lot of times you'll see like a hand with an extra finger or a finger intersecting a finger that it shouldn't be or can't. But I think as far as I know, those are the only like sort of, no pun intended, but fingerprints that I tend to find. Or sometimes you can kind of tell if it's photorealistic or not photorealistic. But I don't know. Do you guys have any other thoughts on that? On how far that's come, and do you know of any other, I guess, ways you can tell if it's AI generated? I know they even have like certain tools out there that can keep an AI from capturing whatever it is on an image, like a sticker you could put on your jacket so that cameras can't, it messes with the camera, and things that you can put in a picture so that it doesn't get stolen and things like that are used for AI. Any thoughts on that stuff?
It's technology that's constantly leapfrogging each other. So, as soon as, like you said, there's that, hey, there's something you can put on your image to make sure it's not captured incorrectly. But then somebody figures out a way to defeat it, and then it's constantly just a back and forth game.
It's competitive, right? I mean, that's you can't, because you have different developers. This isn't just something that one company is working on. It's multiple companies, hundreds of companies, and it's thousands of people. And basically, you have it becomes a competitive thing. Like someone creates something, and someone's trying to create something that's better or overtakes it. And in this industry, well, I'm gonna call it an industry, but in this segment of the business, the AI segment, it really truly feels like you're trying to defeat a person. Like you're trying to defeat something, not just say, oh, I created, Microsoft Excel, and now I created Google Sheets, and I think Google Sheets is better than Excel or whatever. You're trying to actually like overtake, almost like a being of some kind that's been created. And I think that's where, like to your point, Brad, like I always think like I hope there are things in there that they create, whether it's from a compliance standpoint, so that the difference, because I feel like that's an important that ethics is to understand.
Absolutely, great question. I mean, I know I've seen, and you all probably have too, but I'm seeing today deep fakes of people like Donald Trump or Biden or Elon Musk or whatever saying stuff, and it looks like they're saying it, and it's being presented in a format that looks like it's news. But then you start looking like, wait, what? And you have to cross-reference and double check and triple check because it's fake. And that's going to only get worse. And that comes back to the importance of that ethics and governance piece. As it's getting so smart and so able to create voice and video, like where's it going to be in 5 years? So it's a exciting time and scary time. And I think that's the point. And we're not done, and there's lots of developments in the future. I know one piece that's come up in conversations that I've had, hey, is AI going to take my job? And that's an important thing to just talk about real quickly, because AI is capable of doing things in the creative realm. I've used AI in this presentation to build images and stuff, and you've seen some of those. AI is going to be able to come in and do certain things better than we can. But at the same time, it's going to create jobs and job opportunities that were never invented, were never available before. I mean, think of, back in the 80s when we had fax machines and those were prolific everywhere, and you had to have somebody that would go out and look at the fax machine and pull the information and do something with it, sending faxes and receiving faxes. Somebody's job was doing that. I would guess that that job's mostly gone now. So there's so many, examples over history of things that were there, that was the technology of the day, that have been surpassed by the technology. Now that, that job is no longer there, but two jobs have popped up in place of the job that it replaced. So it comes back to, there's a slide coming up that takes that one home a little bit further. Jordan, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, I would also say it's sometimes a redistribution of jobs, right? I would argue that in most, everyone who's on this webinar and everyone who hopefully gets to see it, I would argue that if you polled most everybody, they would say that what they do for work, what they do as their job, their scope, their functionality, they're wearing more than one hat. As a just overall in the workforce, we are almost always tasked with doing more with less, right? So I always look at AI very similar to how we talk about our platform, because our platform comes in and tries to take the place and really try to make things more efficient and effective. And sometimes that makes people nervous, but the truth is what it can do is free people up to do other things that can make the business better. And that's the way I envision the current state of AI is.
Yep.
It's a tool that helps you do things effectively and efficiently, and potentially helps you be more productive. So you can spin it a lot of different ways, and I can understand why people would be nervous, because there might be jobs that get eliminated, but hopefully there's foresight and leadership in place that takes people whose jobs might be effective and say, this person's talented, we hired them for a reason. How can we redirect them and potentially put them in a new role that's going to bring value to the company, right?
Yep. And that is a perfect segue, I believe, for the next slide. Totally unrehearsed.
No, we nailed that one.
Yeah, so, this picture, once again, this was created with Midjourney, just with a couple of prompts. And I think it really talks about what we were just saying. It's like things are coming at us really fast, all these little packets of data coming at us. It feels sometimes like we're just being overwhelmed. And it leads us to the question of, how do we engage today? What do we do if it's changing so fast and nobody really knows and it's not there yet? How do we engage? And I don't know, I'll pause there for a second. Jordan, any additional thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, first off, I wanted to point it out in the beginning, but I love how you used AI in the presentation with the pictures, right, to create some of these slides. And I could tell you right now, like, I engage it in very small ways. I'm in sales, I'm in partnerships. Every now and again, I want to send out an email to, maybe 10 to 20 people, just to try to either re-engage them or see what opportunities may exist, or just very generic sales touch points. And as creative as I might come across, like sometimes you get stuck. You don't want to sound corny, but you want something that stands out. It is really helpful to sometimes just go to ChatGPT and just type in, I want to write an email to blah, 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 blah. And it spits out an email that I will take and look at it and say, okay, I like how this is structured. I like a lot of the verbiage. Now let's tailor it to what I need. So instead of spending maybe an hour constructing an email, now I just cut that time in, a half or a third, and I could spend 20 minutes taking what they gave me and then building out an email. And I mean, that's one example, right? Another simple example, which has worked out well. So Brad, who some of you have heard just now and saw in the beginning, he is one of our senior marketing managers and really in charge of our SEO and how do we really become visible to the community. And we've had some leads come in who found us through ChatGPT because they went out and said, what e-commerce platforms will do XYZ or whatever they did, and it brought them to us. So there are real strategic ways if you kind of start thinking through, like, what is my SEO strategy? What is my sales strategy? What is our overall marketing strategy? And how can we get on some of the radar? Because I believe, Ryan, you were saying this prior too, you use ChatGPT a lot instead of Google. And because it uses Google, right? Or it uses Bing or whatever, platform it uses for search, but it's going to give you a lot of the same results, but it takes it, it summarizes it, and it can bring you business. It really can. So just little things that, I'd say probably if you asked me 6 months ago about AI, I would have thought of it in terms of like, there's like robots that are going to be doing like chores for us and, very high level, like things you see in movies. And then once I started actually getting into the functionality of it, I started to realize like this has very small applications that could have really big results on just our day-to-day activities within our work. So a couple.
Yeah, no, and I think that takes us right to the next one as well.
Oops.
Oh, no problem. Yep. So, and actually, you can jump to the next one. I can just start talking. So, it leads us right into the question of like, okay, great, this is all good stuff. And maybe it's hopefully it's not overwhelming. We're trying to kind of like bring it into reality mode. But I think it's helpful to everybody. How do we get started? What's the right thing? And I know one of the first things I did is like, okay, I need to learn about AI. And there's a really good course in something we forgot to mention. There is a white paper download at the end of this webinar, and the white paper has additional information in it. It mentions, I know for a fact, it mentions some resources that you can go to learn some basics. One thing that I did, there's a nice course called AI for Everyone on Coursera. And it just steps you through kind of these basic things that you should be thinking of related to AI. That would be a good recommendation. But just learn the basics, put your toe in the water. Like Jordan was mentioning, how can I use this in my day-to-day life to make my life a little bit better? Can I use it to help me craft an email or to do some research? One of the things coming from my implementation background is when people see new systems or new technologies, they want to like take it across the whole business and say, hey, let's put this in everywhere. And then what happens is they try to put it in everywhere, and invariably the project will fail because they bit off too much at once. There's the ongoing thing that how do you eat an elephant, right? It's one bite at a time, one small bite at a time. Don't try to do it all at once. Publish your idea of, hey, company, hey, team, this is, we're going to support AI, and here's how we're going to support it. Get their involvement little bit at a time. Hey, we're not going to shove it down your throat. We're going to help you. We're going to build some momentum. And then it's really important too, I know in building chatbots for folks, it's like, oh, let's pretend like this is a person that's responding. My advice would be don't do that. Stay transparent. If you're using AI for something, make sure that everybody knows that it's AI so that if it goes sideways, which sometimes they do, you don't get, some really bad customer experience or something from a chatbot that was just trying to tell people what hours your business was open. And then, basically rinse and repeat. Keep learning, keep adapting. Don't put your head in the sand. It's not that bad. There's easy ways. Anybody can go to ChatGPT or OpenAI, openai.com, click a button, sign up. It'll take you 5 or 10 minutes, and then just start playing. Have a child's mindset. That would be, for today, that's probably the best sequence of things. And I'll pause for any additional comments, Jordan.
Yeah, I was going to say that the comment you just made about the transparency, I think we've all in our personal lives used a chatbot with a company for a customer support standpoint, and you can tell pretty quickly if it is a chatbot or not a chatbot by some of the questions they ask and some of the repetitive nature of it, right? And that's fine. I know this from a customer support standpoint and customer success standpoint. Expectations are where you get good grades and good marks, right? That's what keeps customers coming back. If you set expectations up properly, they will respect them. They're going to respect the way that you approach it, and they're also going to know what to expect. If you make it seem like you said, this is a real person, when in reality it's not, and then they're just not getting the interaction, that's going to set you back. So transparency, I think, is key and critical. I would also say that you mentioned the AI for everyone, and I'm not familiar. I haven't taken it, but I hopefully maybe in there they sort of give you sort of the collection of what is available to you. Like, what are the things that you can do, and then strategically start to look at it and say, okay, like you said, don't take big bites. Like, you can't eat an elephant all at once. You don't have to say, like, guys, we're going to transform our whole business, but let's take some of the things that are relevant to the business, to our day-to-day operation, and let's start trying things out, right? Maybe it's one person, maybe it's a team of people, whatever that may be, but just start integrating it in. And I think those are two really, really important things to really remember when doing it.
Yep. Yeah, thank you. Let's move on.
Yeah, if I could just add a comment too, just on the practical ways to use AI today. Obviously, ChatGPT is at the top of all the headlines right now, but everybody knows of using ChatGPT to help write an email, or unfortunately, a lot of blogs are getting written by ChatGPT now, in entire pieces of content. But a really practical way to use it too, especially if you're in sales or marketing, is for research, like Ryan hinted to a second ago. But if you're about to jump on a call with a prospect and you want to find out what somebody in their industry might be concerned about or challenges they face related to that topic, ChatGPT does an amazing job, and these AI tools out there now just do a great job at understanding the nuance of your question and really providing a wide range of things that are applicable to what you're looking for. So rather than having to look up individual articles, summarizing bits of information through ChatGPT is a huge practical way to use it, and not as, I guess, gray in the ethical area as using it to write entire articles and things like that.
Yeah, actually, just on that point, you made me think of something I did recently where I was getting ready to meet with a prospect, and ChatGPT is my friend, so I'm like, okay, can you, to ChatGPT in the prompt, hey, I'm getting ready to get on a sales call, an initial sales call with this client. Here's their website. Can you summarize the company for me and tell me, the top 3 things that they might be concerned about? Something like that. And it's amazing. It can spit out 2 or 3 paragraphs really fast. And that would have normally taken me, I don't know, a half an hour, 45 minutes to poke around at the website, see what they're doing. And it took me like maybe 30 seconds.
Yep.
So just another great example. So thanks for that. So what do we got next? Okay, another Midjourney image. So and this is great because it's all flowing. Like, we're talking about ideas, how we can use AI today to start to gain a competitive advantage. This journey, just for reference, was built with Midjourney. It's a cool little tool that goes inside of Discord. If you've used Discord before, there's lots of others. DALL-E, which is now built into ChatGPT, is cool. If you're into the Adobe suite, Firefly works well as well. And we've already kind of given some examples of how we can use AI today. And the competitive advantage really comes in the terms of small little gains in productivity. At least that's what I'm seeing. And I think that's what I'm hearing from Jordan and Brad also, is that it's not like, hey, it's changing everything and we're going to, be in, this sci-fi movie here tomorrow. But little gains in productivity can help maybe a small business or mid-sized business take their staff of, 10 people or 15 people and really allow them to be more productive and to serve their customers better. Jordan, anything that you could add to that?
I'd totally agree. Also, I'll throw back in there the visibility piece, right? Because like you've mentioned it a few times, like using ChatGPT as a search engine, how do you make sure that ChatGPT is pulling you in as an option when people are searching for you, right? Or when people are searching for your industry? I think that's probably a little bit of an unknown. I would say to some degree that that worked out for us in a couple of instances, and I don't think there's a way to like make sure it happens, but having it in mind is huge, right? Like, how do you start thinking through like, hey, the average buyer, I could tell you right now, majority, there's like I'm gonna butcher this, but I want to say 70% of buyers, they're in a millennial range, like 27 to 42 years old, and they grew up in that technology. They grew up in technology, older, that generation up, kind of grew up a little bit before and during the computer era, but you have 27, 30-year-olds that their whole life has been built around computers and technology. And so being able to understand like who's that target, they're using ChatGPT. They're using it to search. They're using it to find solutions. How do you, position your company to be in that? And that's I don't know if there's a real answer to it, but that's something to consider when you're building out that marketing strategy. And I could tell you from our standpoint, it's something we're always looking at. How do we get ahead of it? How do we get involved with it? That's a huge part for us.
Yep. Thank you. Let's go to the next.
Yep, and we did actually just get a question too, related to the using it for research, as we were just talking about. The question is, how do you know when the sources, like, how do you know what are the sources that ChatGPT or other AI softwares are using to mine that data and to determine that answer? My experience.
Go ahead, Brad.
I was just going to say, in my experience, I've actually tried to ask ChatGPT that exact question when asking about a stat that it provided, and it will actually say, I cannot provide this source. You should not use the information I provide as fact. Just use it for, I don't know, whatever language they use to kind of cover themselves there.
And that is the case, but going back to the notion that things are changing really fast. So just this week, I'm doing a little research, and I don't know if anybody here has young kids. I have a kid in middle school, and I'm doing some research on ADHD. And the question I asked was, is there a connection between ADHD and nutrition? And it gave me back a whole bunch of information. And then I'm like, okay, great. I wonder if any of this is trustworthy or not. And then I dug in one level deeper. And then I did ask it, give me the sources. And I was totally expecting what you just said, Brad. Oh, sorry, don't pay attention to my stuff. It's not worthy. But this week, I actually got it back, and it gave me, and I haven't confirmed, but it gave me sources with papers, dates that they were written, and it gave me like 10 different sources back for the information that it gave me, which I was blown away. It's like, because prior to this week, I had been getting that same response that you just mentioned. Like, oh, don't trust this because it's, who knows what. But it's getting better, and you don't even know when it gets better because they don't tell you. It just happens.
Right. Yeah, that's the always evolving part of it. That's so interesting. And yeah, that really changes things when it comes to like college papers and things like that, because obviously people were going to think, how can I use AI to write this paper or do this homework for me? But even if they don't use it to write the paper or do the homework, they can get sources and quotes and things like that they need for that type of work, which is super common when writing those papers.
It can still make the process of writing so much faster.
Right.
It's also a context piece, right? Like Ryan, the question you asked could really, like, if you go and scour the internet, you could probably find a million different opinions on what that is. And so it really depends. Like if you're a college student and you're going to write a paper, my gut tells me your professor probably put into ChatGPT like the exact same thing, and it spit out a paper, and they could just read it once, and then every time they get their students' papers, they could be like, nope, that looks like AI, and set it all aside. I think there always depends on the question you're asking. How important is it? What is the real end game for you? Are you just trying to get summaries of things or opinions? Or are you really trying to come to a real strong conclusion on something? It's always going to take a little bit of an extra, research. I'm a very devil's advocate type person. I like to know that the source I'm getting something from can be trusted. So I will take that extra step to make sure I'm getting the right information and can confirm it. So I think with anything, you just try to confirm that stuff, and it really depends on what the purpose of the information you're asking for is.
Yep. and just backtracking a little bit, and I know we're going to be really tight on time. There's so much to talk about.
Yeah.
But what we were just talking about comes back to that slide earlier that said one of the big concerns that we still have to solve for is explainable AI, because, okay, why did it come up with this answer? And why is the answer different when I ask it 2 or 3 different times? Who knows? You know, and it's starting to get closer to at least providing sources. So, and I had another thought, but it skipped my head. Let's move into this one because I think we have just a couple of more slides and we're running short on time. So some current examples, and there's some real cool things. Like we've already talked about the notion of augmenting and using apps to help with your productivity. There's lots of really cool things you can do with data relating to insights, personalization, analytics. If your data is good, another big call out for things that you can start working on today are things that will improve the quality of your data, because that's important in AI. Forecasting, chatbots for customer service, that's kind of a no-brainer. They're very cool. You can have them working for you 24/7, so nobody ever has to guess when your hours are open or if you have a particular product. And just a quick call out on Microsoft's Copilot brand, and I really like the name of it because it really embodies where it is today. It's not the pilot, right? The pilot has to be the human, the person, but the Copilot, the AI, can help you do things that would be too much for you to handle on your own. And I think that's the right mindset. AI is at a place where it can help us do things better, faster, more productivity. It's nowhere near ready to replace us. And I think the next slide is about specifically about e-commerce. I'll give this one to Jordan.
Yeah, and I want to try to stay within time. So some of these you already mentioned, right? Service chatbots, so being able to provide that customer support premise on your e-commerce. Personalized recommendations is a big one, right? I know if you've ever gone to any website and you're shopping and you pick out a shirt or a pair of pants and it says, customers also bought XYZ, right? Like taking those recommendations and that opportunity to cross-sell across your platform and your product line. Voice search and assistance, predictive analytics. I think this is a big one that's going to start really becoming more prevalent, where you have the software, you have the IP built in, and you can start looking at your customer behavior and looking at industry behavior to say, hey, you're trying to build out strategy on the products you're either going to build, the products you're going to sell, how you're going to market them, and start looking at the predictive analytics of, hey, like maybe it's a seasonal thing, right? Maybe you're looking at, the flu season is getting really heavy and you sell, some of those like safety products to help, thwart it, right? So there are a lot of different ways, but I think these are the ways that currently it's being used. I'd also, add in there that Copilot piece is huge when you're looking at it on the other side of the coin, being able to say, hey, like our e-commerce platform, like who are the customers we want to go market this stuff to? And so I think that is all real world alive today. People are using it in various ways. Next slide, Brian. And then the future of e-commerce is this is all fun stuff, right? Stuff that is either kind of in play today in its infancy and it's going to grow and become more robust, and stuff that is really more of an idea. So I don't want to go through all of these, but I've already mentioned SEO optimization is a really big one. Ryan, you mentioned how can I go and look at a customer or potential customer and find out what are their 3 biggest obstacles or 3 biggest challenges in their industry that you can help build a sales pitch around. Search and voice control. I mean, we saw the chart. Everything's kind of on that really, really steep incline, and it's just getting better and better. Smart content suggestions. I always feel like that's something that exists today. If you say something around your phone and you pull up, Facebook or Instagram or anything, all of a sudden you start seeing ads for the thing that you were just talking about. That's not a coincidence, right? That's built-in technology that's happening. So, all of these, even though it says future, you're seeing some of it now. I think one of the more interesting ones is dynamic pricing, because being able to search and scour the web for pricing for similar or same products can really allow a business to become very, very competitive. So you could set pricing based on what your competition is doing, based on global competition, based on global supply and demand. Your pricing can vary very, very quickly. So having that very dynamic pricing is to me one of the bigger ones that I know is in effect now, but it's not in effect across the board. I think when you look at some of these, you think, well, some of this is all available. It is, but it's not available to everyone yet. It's available to larger organizations that have talent and have built out some of this functionality. But soon, I think you're going to see it become much more available to the smaller and mid-sized companies as they get access to this technology. So all of this is really, it's going to be great. I mean, I don't think we have a vision of the future where we're going to backtrack to where we're going to go back to fax machines and, you know, every sale is going to be done over the phone, and mini malls are going to start coming back, and we're just going to have to start going out and buy stuff. I mean, I could tell you 95% of the things in my household that gets purchased gets delivered to our front door. So it is not like, that's not, you know, a fad. It is going to continue. So all of these, as you know, time goes on, technology gets better, it's all going to become much, much more relevant. And again, I think getting in on it now and starting to really utilize these tools now can really help prepare your business for what's to come.
Yeah, let's wrap it up. I think we got one last slide. Actually, let's just fast forward to that. And so we've kind of gone through a lot of stuff, right? We talked about the history of AI. We talked about ways to think about it, ways to get started, and we kind of ended with, you know, and not to mention the hype versus reality. That was a really important piece. And then we ended with, hey, how can we do things today? I know we're kind of like right at the last minute, and I wanted to give a minute, at least a minute, or maybe we can hold it a little bit longer for the download. You can scan the QR code here. For some reason, this is another thing that always blows my mind, that it's so easy to just take your cell phone and scan a QR code and get something, but it's not new technology either. But I wanted to just also express my gratitude, and this to me was really fun to have this conversation with Jordan today. And thank you for spending some time with us. And if there's any follow-up that we can do, I'm happy to answer questions offline or talk with anybody that wants to talk about AI. I'm really excited about the topic in general, yes, and would love any additional input or questions.
And I would say, like, if you can really, the white paper is a really good read. It's not a hard read at all. And it's got a lot of really good information. Ryan, you did an amazing job putting this together, you know, putting the white paper, taking the time. I agree. I hope you know, people get to see this, really get a lot out of it, take some of the stigmas out of it, and help set expectations, because again, it's something that's happening. It's coming down the track. It's just more about, can you get comfortable, and what are the things you could do to enhance your business and in some ways your career.